Hello and welcome to the Last Movie Outpost. We have got a very special guest with us today. We recently did a review of the movie Brian and Charles, and with us is the director, Jim Archer. Hello, Jim.
Hello, thanks for having me, Phil. Cheers.
Absolutely not a problem. Really, thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate it. Now, Brian and Charles is a very interesting movie that seemed to, for us at least, sort of come out of nowhere. I think somebody discovered a trailer and we put it online. Tell us about the film.
Well, so Brian Charles is a story about a lonely inventor who builds a robot, and it's the sort of trials and tribulations that brings, really. It's sort of based on a short film that we did 5 years ago, and before that it's based on sort of these two characters that existed in the live comedy scene in the UK.
Didn't look too bad, does he? I wonder what he'll do when I turn him on.
Annoyingly, you have now frozen up.
Oh, did I freeze there? Yeah, I thought that might happen.
Don't worry too much. What we will do is, like I say, I appreciate your time is busy. So, I mean, what we'll do is we've just got a nice picture of you. You look quite good frozen, so you're not making like a too weird face, so it's not too bad. But we can hear you, so that what I'll do is we'll just carry on like this. I think is going to be the best thing. Brian and Charles started out as a short film, didn't it, originally? Again, sort of, where did it come from?
So yeah, it came from the live comedy scene. So it was based on two characters that David and Chris played. Like David, who created the Brian character like 15 years ago. I think like sort of 2006 or something. That's longer than 15 years ago. But yeah, so he there's many iterations of that character, and then he did this live sort of phone-in show where people would phone in and sort of tell him that his problems, and it was sort of a comedy kind of terrible radio host type thing. And then one day Rupert, our producer, phoned in with this sort of Charles robot voice, and that was then the birth of Charles. Like David loved like doing that and sort of bouncing off the sort of weirdness of Charles, and the long pauses he had to wait for when Rupert is typing for like a minute, and then but then after that, Chris was listening in. Chris is the other writer and plays Charles, and he built a version of Charles for the live shows, and that's kind of where the whole thing really started.
And with it, like I say, obviously the short did sort of quite well online, but did you ever then imagine that it was going to be made into a feature film?
No, not really. I mean, we were looking, when we shot the film, we were sort of excited about the idea of a feature. We were shooting in the Welsh countryside, so we're in a little like Airbnb, and we're just there for like 2-3 days, and we're like, oh, if we could spend 3 weeks here, we'd have a film. So that was sort of maybe where the sort of kernel of the idea came from. But then it wasn't really until Ollie at Film 4, kind of after the short film came out, he sent us a message just wondering if we wanted to make it into a feature. And so it wasn't really until someone like that with that kind of power was interested in it that we sort of explored it as a feature.
But I mean, it's fantastic from its inception of the original idea. I mean, particularly, one thing I did notice is I did track down the short and watch the short recently as well. The difference between the two movies, the short movie, he seems quite angrier and he sort of seems to give up on Charles quite quickly, whereas in the movie he seems much nicer and much more relatable. Was that kind of a plan with the film, or?
Oh, sorry. If you could repeat that question again, you broke up there.
That's all right.
My internet's terrible here.
Are you in a little country village as well? Are you?
Yeah, I'm in Dorset. Yeah.
That's so weird. I'm just around the corner near Crewcone.
How are you?
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
weird. I could have actually popped down the road and done it live. How weird is that? Right, so sorry, coming back to it. Yeah, the difference between the short and the movie version, in the short, Brian seemed quite angry and seemed to give up on Charles quite quickly, whereas obviously in the movie he was quite different. Was that intentional?
Yeah, it was. I mean, the short actually was sort of, it was built from a lot of things. The short, so we always had this idea of like those two and this sort of, that sort of relationship, and then and putting them in the countryside and sort of seeing how that played out. But then we sort of did a lot of research on real documentary shorts, and found this one. There's a few we looked at. There's one about a guy who eats roadkill, and there's another one about
Yeah.
a guy who collects bugs. But then we came across this one called Peter and Ben, which is about a guy and a sheep, and he keeps a sheep in his house. And so we sort of based the sort of final kind of half of the final act of the short on that short, because literally we basically just did a parody of that,
Right.
where this guy like has to get rid of his sheep and leave it on a hill, and then it eventually comes back, and it's so that
Oh,
kind of final thing.
right.
Yeah, so we were,
I see. Yeah, I see where that came from then.
yeah, so we just got, it was really just like, it was almost a parody of that bit at the end anyway. But then
And we've lost him for a second. The wonders of living in the countryside. It's
do
very
you
beautiful.
want
And there you are, you're back with us.
if you want, I can do, which might be easier if I just go off video, then we can do the audio.
Yeah,
Seeing as
that's
seeing
fine. Like I say, I
as-
think I'll edit it down that way anyway. So yeah, if you want to do that, Jim, that's fine. There's no problem.
I'll oh, yeah, I'll go to somewhere less aesthetically pleasing.
I set my little office up, so I've got a nice little backdrop and everything else for here, because we do live streams every week, and like I say, I do the occasional interview, so I make it look at least mildly movie wise to behind me.
Right. Well, it should be. This should be much better internet, but I won't put it on the video because otherwise it's just going to be me in my bed. I don't really want that.
That's not the impression we want to give for a movie director such as yourself. Now, also with the movie, did you then add Eddie as the kind of bad guy antagonist that sort of, you know, Brian could stand up to?
How much you want for him? Oh, he's not for sale.
Yeah. So when we did, when we were developing it, and we wanted to sort of stretch it to sort of 90 minutes. I mean, stretch is probably the wrong word, but
No.
we wanted to. We sort of, I guess at first we did think about just kind of stretching it, the idea of the short, but then we're just like, no, we need to start from scratch and just take these characters and just start and do a new story with them and that sort of dynamic. So yeah, with that in mind, we're like, well, now we need to see, now we need a few more characters to build the world of the village more. Like we like the idea of a sort of love triangle with Brian and Hazel and Charles,
Yeah.
and that just made us laugh anyway. But also, then yes, like Eddie came in. We wanted an antagonist, so we looked at lots of films like E.T., sort of those sort of Spielbergian films, and Wallace and Gromit and stuff like that, and sort of realize, oh yeah, that we kind of liked that formula of like having this sort of antagonist that threatens their friendship. So yeah, that's where we sort of settled on Eddie. There were definitely some versions that were different. I think we had one version where it was like government officials, and we're like, well, this is exactly the same as E.T. So nice.
Yeah, they're all walking around with torches at night, so yeah, it's a bit of a giveaway.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the actual relationship between the two was fantastic, and one thing that I don't want to say struck me, but what I did love about Charles was, have worked in the past with adults with learning disabilities, especially ones with autism, and to me, Charles seemed like he was kind of on the spectrum, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. Was there any kind of that in the writing at all, or was it just sort of Charles's natural evolution?
Those kind of like interpretations we like. While it wasn't like I never like to say to specifically what people should interpret from it, but
Right.
From like previous iterations, we knew that people had those associations with like that as a child with autism, or it's like people sometimes. I think Mark Kermode said he related to it because like his parent with Alzheimer's. So it's that kind of like slightly different pattern of speech, or unusualness.
Sort of different way of looking at the world.
Exactly, yeah. So and so that's what we liked. I mean, like structurally, it's kind of like based on a sort of parent and child thing, but yeah, definitely. Like I think that's part of his appeal, is that he looks at the world in a different way, and yeah, I can definitely. But no, I think to answer your question, like it wasn't like a conscious thing to make it deliberately like that, but we knew that would be, it was, some people would interpret it that way.
I mean, the only reason I mention it is I know that Dave Bautista, who played Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy, his character there was, it seemed on the spectrum that he took everything quite literally, almost like Charles. And he said he had so many letters from people saying thank you, that autistic children would go to see the movie and then completely relate and sort of say, wow, there's a character on the screen that's just like me. And so I thought of it because I know, like I say, adults with learning disabilities who have autism, who I really want to show the movie to, because I think they would genuinely love the character of Charles.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I mean, I have actually seen some tweets from people who are either autistic or on the spectrum, or have brought their kids who have autism and who've like loved it. I mean, there's a couple of reviews on YouTube from people who are on the spectrum and have reviewed it and just seem to really have engaged with it. So I didn't even think of it on that level, that they might be relating to Charles, but that's yeah.
Oh, like I say, I think it was wonderful, the way it was done. Now, coming to Charles, I did a quick bit of research, and apparently about 14,000 people worked on Avengers Endgame in the CG. How many people worked on Charles?
Well, I can tell you how many people worked on our CG on the film, and that was one person.
Right.
Who did all our VFX, which is very little. I think the VFX did some cabbages and I think the birds at some point.
Right.
That's about the extent of it. But yeah, how many people worked on Charles? Well, it's Chris's design, so that's one. And then yeah, our art department and costume just combined together to they kind of worked in like perfect harmony, really, because the costume and the build of him are sort of one, really. He's like on the border of being a prop or being, his arm is kind of all cloth. But yeah, so like, I mean, Hannah, our production designer, did like an amazing job just sort of building on what we had in the short and just giving him this kind of more logic to him. And then Gabby, our costume designer, did a great job just suiting him up.
He was, I mean, like I say, I think the first image I saw was of both Brian and Charles together, and I looked at Charles and I thought, what on earth is that? But then when I saw the trailer, what really struck me was just the brilliant writing of this incredibly good character, that it kind of shows that you can have all the CG in the world, but if you've not got a character behind it, it's kind of, it doesn't really work. And so that's one thing I genuinely loved about the film, was you just had these two, I mean, obviously there's other characters, but you had these two wonderful characters who played off each other so brilliantly well. It was an absolute treat to watch. It really was.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, I think that's true with Charles. Like, it is sort of proof that you don't need all these bells and whistles. And even like, if you look at Charles, you can see that there's a person in there. Like, we're not hiding it too hard. We tried to do things to make the legs less human, but we didn't want to do too much. And also, I also use it as a note to actors as well. Like, the fact that you can emote so much with him, and he does like literally nothing with his face other than his mouth a little bit.
Yeah, his mouth sort of kind of goes in and out a little bit while he's talking, isn't it? There's not much animatronics in there.
No, but it's all Chris just moving that in a certain way and shifting his body in a certain way, and you can emote with him. So yeah.
Like I say, it truly was wonderful. And like I say, my review, I'm not the kind of person who's going to patronize people, but I mean, as soon as I saw it, I wanted to reach out to you to have a chat with you, just to say what a great piece of film it was. Usually I watch movies, but it was great to watch a piece of film.
Oh, thanks very much. That's
even though I know it was digital in this day and age. So just quickly talking about you yourself, how did you become a director?
So I didn't go to film school. So I left university with the intention of just trying to work in the TV industry. But at the same time, I was interested in sort of comedy, so I started making sketches, just filming them on my mini DV camcorder that I sort of did myself and put myself in. And then after that, I was working on sets as a runner, and just through that process of just learning on set, I sort of got the confidence to make my first short film, and I funded it from Kickstarter and all that. So yeah, I think it was 2014 when I made my first short, and
Wow.
that was kind of when it all kind of kicked off a little. I say kicked off. It was nothing kicked off after that, but
Yeah.
I had to make at least 3 more short films, and eventually, yeah, then things got going.
Oh, again, it's one of those things that if you've got that passion for it, you can go for it, and it really comes across that. I mean, you say that you've not sort of studied directing and that kind of thing, but the film is wonderfully done. Was it easier doing it in that mockumentary style?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, I'd say. Like, I wanted to do something different with the mockumentary style, so I wanted it to feel like a sort of modern documentary and feel cinematic. So sometimes it's useful to have those kind of like things to like lean on, and especially with the time we could only cover scenes in a certain way because of the mockumentary, but also that gave us, it meant we shot scenes faster. So with our budget constraints, it meant we could actually get more done in a day. But yeah, I've always been interested in like comedy being cinematic and like telling you, like putting emotion into them. So that's sort of one of the reasons I became a director, because at that time I felt like there wasn't really, especially in British comedy, it wasn't really being done. I feel like
Yeah.
it is a lot more now, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, absolutely. Jim, thank you for joining us. Now, where can we see Brian and Charles at the moment?
You can see it in, I was going to say all cinemas. That's definitely not true. You can see it in, it's at 150 cinemas across the country. So go and find your local cinema. It's probably more likely a picture house or your sort of independents. But yeah.
Yeah. Which is great. I mean, I'm a huge fan of independent film. I do find I'm not anti-Hollywood, but Hollywood just seems to churn out content these days. And that's why a film like this is so wonderfully charming. It's so quintessentially British, and it was a genuine treat to watch.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, thanks for supporting it.
That's okay. Like I say, Jim, thank you so much for joining us on the Last Movie Outpost. Brian and Charles, I've got a review up online, which I highly recommend you go and see, and I highly recommend you go and see the film. But Jim Carter, thank you, Archer, sorry, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Phil.
It wouldn't be an interview with me if I got the name wrong, so it's okay.
Great. So is that all right? Is that you just will you just sort of just use an image or something just to?
Yes, basically, like I say, I'll grab a nice image, or I'll find one online, or if you want to send me one through, I'll paste that over the top. But I want to kind of I'll get the trailer from the film as well, just to sort of intersperse that with little clips and bits and pieces, and then images from the film and stuff. I honestly, it was one of those films. Like I say, I'm not anti-Hollywood, but I am very much bored with what Hollywood produce at the moment, and so when a film like this comes out, I want everybody to go and see it, because I want them to just see something a little bit different,
Yeah.
which is what it was, because like I say, it was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, I've not seen. Have you seen Thor yet? I've not seen it.
Not yet, no. The last disappointment I had was Jurassic Park Dominion.
Oh yeah, I've not seen that either.
Oh, it was just, the writing is just, it's so bad. I mean, at the beginning, basically Chris Pratt has got Blue, the velociraptor, and Blue's had a baby, and the baby gets kidnapped, and Chris Pratt at one point sort of holds his hand out and says to Blue, looks in her eyes and says, I promise I'll get her back for you. And it was just kind of like, seriously, and like you say, you think of how many millions of dollars they spend on these movies, whereas, a little independent film like yours, I'm going to say this, genuinely had me crying at the end. The whole bit where Charles gets on the train and everything else, both me and my wife were sat there and just, oh, he's going to go on a nice holiday. And then the end credits as well. just having the little photos of Charles just traveling the world was, you know, it was a genuine delight of a movie to watch.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, the intention is for you to cry, so there's no shame in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, thank you ever so much. If there is anything else that you're working on in the future, I'll hopefully be in contact. Or if there's anything that, I mean, we're only a sort of smallish site at the moment, but if there's anything we can do at the Last Movie Outpost to do to promote your products, please give us a shout. We'd be happy to help.
Awesome, thanks, Phil. I'll be sure to let you know. I mean, it'll be a while before the next film, but
Are,
awesome.
are you working on anything new at the moment, or?
We're sort of developing a few film ideas between the sort of the Brian and Charles team and me just solo as well. So there should hopefully be something in the near future, in the future. But I also sort of read scripts and stuff like that. So I might do something, another person's film.
Excellent.
So we'll see.
Well, like I say, I look forward to whatever you're going to be working on next. And just one last time, thank you ever so much for taking the time to chat to us.
Thanks. Cheers, Phil.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.